Hey everybody, Ty here. Hope everyone is doing well. If you're hearing that in the background, my air conditioning's acting up. I think it's something to do with the wheel in it that's causing the issue there. So if you hear that intermittently, I apologize. It's been that kind of day. Also, this video is going up late due to the fact that, well, in recent time you might have figured out that I'm not using my previous weather source Pivotal Weather anymore due to some issues with the computer and maybe a couple other things. So as a result, I'm still learning when models upload on what I'm currently using, which is Weather Nerds, which you'll see in a second, but it uploads a lot slower, so it makes things a little bit more challenging, but we're going to work with this the best we can. Also, there's a lot to talk about here because really a lot happened yesterday as well. We had a pretty notable tornado outbreak, if I'm being completely honest. We had 22 tornado reports. And these are even with the filtered reports on here. So, a pretty busy day across the Dakotas, particularly one group of supercells here was the culprit behind all of these tornadoes. It was pretty much just a whole tornado family here. And that should serve as a reminder that even during summer and even early fall, even though fall is technically like a second season, that tornadoes can happen any time of year if the conditions are right, and this is a great example of this. But I do think with the setup that we have for weather in the long term here, I think there may be more opportunities. Are these going to be like those kind of red letter days? I don't really think so, but we could be surprised every once in a while. You could see that even today we had a 2% area kind of pop up over here towards the east coast, particularly over towards the North Carolina coastline and parts of southern Virginia. Mainly the beaches are being affected, were under the threat today, but not much really came of it, thankfully, though. I haven't seen any tornado reports as of recent that have popped up on here. Just a couple of wind and isolated hail reports as well. If we were to go ahead and look at the following day, it's another marginal risk, more of a wind and hail threat more so than anything else. Then from that point, there's no threat for severe weather and potential and predictability too low tags running rampant. Mostly potential too low, thankfully. It's not till day 8 that we get the predictability too low tags. Keep in mind that that is prone to change over the next few days, though. So we'll have to still keep an eye on things going forward. So, of course, with severe weather still kind of being a little bit on the download but sneaky side, we're kind of paying more attention to the temperatures right now, and we already have been talking about it recently in the few videos that I have made lately, that we're expecting a pretty big warm up, and this is a great example of what exactly we are in for. And in particular, over towards the northern states is where we're expecting the most significant temperature increase here. We're well above average here. If you actually take a look at the percentiles, we're getting into the 70 to 80 percentile range here. So we're starting to see a threat for maybe even some record temperatures even being broken here. So something to make note of as we go over the next week or so. And the confidence remains pretty high even as we get towards the very end of the month for the region. Everybody as a whole here looks like they've honestly warmed up pretty notably, or even significantly, dare I say. Even towards the eastern half of the country, where we were just kind of sitting in that 30 to 40 percentile, we're kind of getting into the 60 to 70, 50 to 60, some places even sneaking into that 70 percentile before all is said and done. So the heat is coming back on. But I do think as we get into October, we might shift a little bit here. There is some indicators of that. We'll go into greater detail with that later this week as we get more data available. We still don't officially have model data that goes really past the first right now, or consistent model data, I should say. Another big topic, of course, is the precip with this as well. And you'll see more of a reflection of this with the data that we do have available, is that the weather is going to get a little bit more active too with that increase in temperatures. That usually kind of happens whenever we're shifting from that little cold spell that we had here, especially over towards the eastern US, where we were almost in the 70s and 60s depending on where you are. So no matter how you look at it, it's been pretty busy. It's been pretty quiet over here, been pretty cool, but now with this sudden shift, shower and thunderstorm chances are definitely not out of the question. It seems quite feasible. And then also, we've been talking about the western states a lot as of late, especially with the shift that we're expecting. We've talked about it a lot in the Outlook videos. you can see that the precipitation is starting to come in a little bit more heavy here with higher confidence, getting into that 50 to 60 and even beyond percentile range here at this point. So those are the things we're going to be making note of. It's going to be a little bit drier as we get further along over towards the northern states. That's going to be due to the jet stream starting to kind of become a little bit more zonal towards this region particularly, especially as we get closer towards the 10-day range more so than anything else. And then we'll start to see a little bit more movement as we get the 8 to 14-day range here. You can see still the western half, especially the northwest, seems to be the most active, and then we're kind of keeping that activity going over towards the Gulf Coast states and the deep south here. So of course we're going to take a look at our models here. We have the GFS and the Euro here for comparison purposes, of course. And then if we look at both of these, what you'll notice is you're going to start to see some troughing over the course of these next few days, but as we go further along here, especially after we get to about a week out, we start to see more zonal action, but then we're kind of picking back up as we get towards the very end of the month here. So we're going to be seeing a lot of shifting around. Not atypical for this time of year. I mean, we are transitioning into fall here. It's early fall, so we're going to have those times where we end up seeing a little bit of action, then we start kind of going back and forth between that and a little bit more of the summer trend that we've had. So I wouldn't rule out more 90-degree days depending on where you are, maybe even some triple digits if you're far enough to the south. But as a whole here, looking at both the GFS and Euro, I think the time frame in which things kind of slow down a bit mainly is going to be between the 23rd and the 25th, and then right towards the very end of the month. Based off of what I'm seeing here, we're going to start to see things really begin to pick back up as we get towards like the 27th to the 30th here. And this is just, of course, looking at one level of the atmosphere. So the upper level jet is what we've mainly been putting our focus towards. If we go ahead and shift our attention over towards the mid levels of the atmosphere, which is usually where you can see those short waves, which are big influences for our thunderstorms here. The main point of interest that really kind of captures my attention is really over towards the central plains. And it really doesn't matter which model you look at here because both are in pretty good agreement at this point. Again, we have that time frame where things kind of slow down, but whenever it does get active, it in particular really kind of catches my eye what we have going on here. You see multiple shortwave troughs kind of popping up here. So it definitely leads me to believe that this might be the area to watch for potentially more severe weather in the long range here. And then, of course, towards the GFS, the Euro, which we're looking at here, it's pretty much the same thing. We do see some troughing that's kind of left over here from these prior events over towards the deep south. So there is a chance that we'll have a couple of cooler days with this as fronts pass through, but nothing will be consistent. But this will undoubtedly increase those rain and thunderstorm chances in particular over here. Let's go ahead and shift our attention towards the low level jet, because as we get into fall, we end up seeing these events where we have lower shear but higher shear and lower cape events. So not as much in the way of convective energy available in the atmosphere, but we'll have a little bit more shear to work with. This is kind of typical of what we'll see during the springtime and the fall severe weather seasons. So if we go ahead and take a look at this, we mainly are going to be putting a lot of our focus over here towards the central plains. Of course, we'll still watch the deep south as there's chances for thunderstorms, but I think the more stout setups, if anything at all, might be coming up here. And I do see some pockets where we have that low-level jet kind of ramping up more consistently, particularly with the GFS. We look at the Euro, it's a little bit more on the inconsistent side, but still a signal is there as well. So, like I said, there's a lot of things that we're going to be watching in particular, but I think this might be what takes the cake for right now. Of course, we have the tropics right now, too, to keep an eye on as always, but we're seeing a little bit more notable signals for severe weather. I wouldn't get super excited about these yet, but definitely something I'm paying a little bit close attention to than I have in recent time, because it's pretty much been close to dead until, well, recently. Maybe a couple of smaller events kind of sprinkled in here and there, but maybe something more notable might be happening with this in the future. So let's go ahead and take a look at our dew points and our temperature here. We're looking at both the GFS and the Euro at this point. So And also, I want to say, because of the new layout that we're using now with Weather Nerds, they don't have the moisture color table here. It's based off of temperature, so I do apologize if that brings some confusion. The color table here is on the right side of the screen, so you'll be able to see it, but you know, I know some of you are probably preferring more of the old format that we had, but we're kind of just working with what we got, fortunately. But either way, big thing to make note of here is the temperatures. If we were to actually freeze this right here in particular and look over towards this area, we can start to see some 90s starting to pop up here. We're flirting with some triple digits here by the time we get towards the 20th and 21st as well. So, like I said, the heat is definitely on the way back. It had to happen eventually, I guess. Kind of sucks because I was really enjoying the way the weather has been too. Like, I'm pretty sure a lot of you have, but it's got to happen at some point. But it does look like we start to cool down a little bit as we get further along into range here. So it does lead me to have some hope that it's not going to be all that bad. I think the worst area right now definitely looks like it's going to be over towards the Midwest and over towards the Gulf states, in particular the Western Gulf states, and then also maybe even western parts of Dixie Alley as a whole here. And then as time goes on, it does look like as we rerun this, yeah, I think the worst really is expected around the 21st here. Just want to make sure we covered our bases here. But as far as moisture is concerned, really the orange color is what we're going to be looking for. That's where we get those dew points into the mid 70s here. And it does kind of lead me to think that scattered showers and thunderstorms are going to continue to be possible here, particularly towards those Gulf states. They always will have a chance to be a little bit stronger given the amount of moisture that's available in the atmosphere. And then also, of course, instability and other factors as well. But seeing that little moisture tail in particular that pops up over here, especially as we get into the medium range, definitely piques my interest a bit more, especially as we get towards that time frame after the 23rd. Because look at the moisture tail that kind of pops up here after the 24th, 25th. And look at that. And look how far north that ends up making it. All the way up towards maybe even the UP of Michigan and parts of Minnesota as well. So that's going to be something that we're going to keep a very, very close eye on as well. So let's go ahead and take this off the screen. Take a look at our instability for a moment here. And basically, the brighter the colors here, the strong. Oh, we're looking at the wrong parameter. Sorry about that. But if we're looking at CAPE here, basically the brighter or the sharper the colors, the greater the amount of instability. So instability in particular really picks up by the time we get towards the middle to late part of the month here. Basically the middle of this run, which would be right around like the 25th and beyond here. So you can see that we're getting into the lower CAPE values of about 1,000 to maybe even up to 1,500 here. Like I said, we're not going to see big numbers like we have over the summertime where we're seeing 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. It's pretty atypical during this time of year. The energy is just not quite as abundant as what it once was, but there's still some chances for some 2,000s to be sprinkled in when you see the little yellow colors popping up here and there. It is during those days where I'm really the most interested in severe weather potential. That combined with, of course, other parameters. Like I said, there is going to be a time frame where that trough becomes a little bit more zonal, and it might be a little bit more of a struggle to get storms to fire. But if we get all those parameters to come together, there might be some more notable events possible with this too. So live streams might be coming back, folks. But last but not least, we'll go ahead and take a look at what the simulated radar could be. And we'll do that with both the GFS and the Euro here. And there's not, like I said, for the most part, model agreement's been pretty continuous here. So for the most part, everything that I've been seeing kind of lines up well with the Euro. GFS seems to be moving just a tad bit faster. Now, one other thing that we're making note of here, and it's interesting because the Euro is only showing it this time instead of the GFS, is that if you look closely, you do kind of see a tropical system popping up here. That is more than likely Invest 92L. that's set to become Gabrielle. But we all know what happened with 91L, so we're keeping our eye on it. GFS has this going a little bit further out. I don't expect this to be a storm that has really any sort of impact to the lower 48 as a whole. You might see some rip currents and maybe some increased surf, increased waves. That's really about it at this point. So nothing of major note to talk about at this time. Of course, we'll be making updates on that as we go, so keep your eyes open for future videos on that. But as a whole here, it's pretty much just what we predicted based off the wind maps here. With the troughing that's coming in, we're going to see more showers and storms beginning to pop up, particularly over towards the central plains and over towards the deep south here. Monsoon season still in effect here, but the showers and thunderstorms are going to be a little bit less abundant there. And a couple other things to make note of here. With the troughing that we're expecting out towards the west, there may be a few opportunities for snow in the higher elevations here. So this is our sign that winter's not far away. It's around the corner. But we'll be keeping an eye on things as we go with that. And keep an eye out because soon we'll be doing a winter outlook here very soon. I hope you guys are looking forward to that. But that's it for this video here. Appreciate you all hanging in during the quieter times. It does look like business might be picking up soon. Till the next one though, everyone have a wonderful rest of your Monday night.